Today I'm going to show you how to migrate your WordPress site from any web hosting service you're using to DigitalOcean, and we are using the one-click OpenLiteSpeed WordPress app to set up the OpenLiteSpeed server together with WordPress. Now this setup is suitable for one website per server, so if you own a big site for example and you don't want to share the server resource with your other websites, then this is perfect for you because you will not be installing a control panel which may slow down your server. So if you want just one super fast loading website, then continue watching. I'll be doing separate tutorials on using a control panel to host multiple domains on one server, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. My channel is all about building fast loading and beautiful WordPress websites. Anyway, this is the domain we want to transfer to DigitalOcean, and this is how it looks like. Let's get right into the tutorial. We are on the DigitalOcean sign up page. To get started, let me provide my first name and email address, and then the preferred password. And let's deploy a droplet. Now, if you use this link to sign up, I've left the link in the description as well, you are going to get a $100 hosting credit to your DigitalOcean account. This is a great way for you to follow along and migrate your WordPress site over to DigitalOcean without any risk. So once you've created an account, DigitalOcean will send you a verification email. You just need to click on this link and it will bring you back to the setup process. So I'll choose to pay with my PayPal account. You can do so with your credit card. It's totally up to you. So I'll select PayPal and then I'll just send $5 over, and I'll go ahead with the payment process. Let me fast forward this process. Now I've made the payment. I'll just have to wait a while for it to redirect, and we're in. The next step is for us to deploy a virtual machine. Let's give it a while, and here's where we start creating a droplet. Let's first go to Marketplace. Then on the search bar, let's search for WordPress. And then you'll see this OpenLiteSpeed WordPress. Let's select that. And then we'll be choosing the shared CPU. Now don't mix this up with shared hosting. It is a totally different thing. What we are setting up is a virtual private server, or VPS in short. And what it means is that in one hard case CPU server, it can have multiple VPS users, each having a dedicated space for their website. It is just like having a private room to yourself in a big building. Whereas in shared hosting, all the websites hosted on the shared server will use one public space. So for a start, we'll use the $5 plan. You can always scale up your plan as your site grows. And then let's move on to the data center region. It really depends on where your site audiences are. If your site target audience is from Singapore, for example, or somewhere within Southeast Asia, you want to choose Singapore. Basically, you will choose the server that is nearest to your audience because it will perform better for them. For this case, I will use the New York server. Let's continue. For the authentication method, I'll use the password method. And then let's set the password for the root server. Make sure that it is a strong password. And in case you are afraid of losing the password because of its strict requirements, you want to save the password somewhere. Let's continue. As for the host name, this is just for our reference. I choose to name the server the same as the domain name. So everything looks good from here. But if you want to have backups for your server, you can always check this. It costs $1 per month, or if your plan is above $5, it'll be 20% of the plan. It's really up to you. There are always free options like using free plugins such as WP Vivid or iThemes. So for now, I'll just leave this unchecked. And let's create a droplet. Now the droplet is in creation. As you can see, I've created one with CyberPanel just to test things out. I will do a tutorial on CyberPanel with DigitalOcean soon, but for now, I'll focus on the OpenLiteSpeed with WordPress setup. I've heard a lot of rumors that CyberPanel will slow down a site, so I'm testing that out as well. So here we are, the server is now created. Let's click into it. Right now, the server is empty. No websites, WordPress or OpenLiteSpeed has been installed. So we need to have a way for our local computer that we are working on to communicate with the computer at DigitalOcean so that we can give command to it to install the necessary. We need something called Telnet. There are many programs you can use, but the easiest I find is this program called Putty. It is a software you can install on your computer and it will allow you to connect with the server CPU at DigitalOcean. So click on this and then Click here to download the program, and once it is downloaded, you want to install the program and run it. It will look like this. Now let's go back to DigitalOcean because we need the IP address of the server to connect with it. Right here, let's click to copy and then open up PuTTY and paste the IP address here. Let's click open. The first time you are connecting with the server, you will receive this security alert. Don't be alarmed by that. Let's accept and move forward. Let me expand this out. Now this is the terminal to communicate with your server, and the first thing you need to do is to log into the root server. So let's type in root, and then you want to type in the password you have created during the setup process. Remember the one that you should keep it somewhere. And once that's done, let's hit enter. Let the system run for a while. And now it is asking you to enter the domain name. We want to enter the domain we are transferring to DigitalOcean and hit enter. Hit Y and enter to verify the domain. And by now the LiteSpeed server has been configured and WordPress has been installed. It is asking you if you want to install the SSL certificate. I know this wouldn't work because you have not pointed your domain name server to DigitalOcean. You have got to do that first and wait for the propagation before you can install SSL. But let's try this out. Let's hit Y and enter. And as you can see, the domain is inaccessible. But we don't want to point the DNS over to DigitalOcean first because we have not made an exact replica of the site you're transferring, so that there is no downtime when we point the DNS over. So let's create an exact replica of the site you're transferring. Let's copy the IP address, open up a new tab, and paste it in. And here we go. WordPress has been installed. Let's select a language and continue. Let's give the site a name, create a WordPress user, and type in a password. Give your email address as well, and let's finish up with the WordPress installation. So it's done. Let's log in. And we are in the WordPress backend. Let us go to plugins. And you'll see all these unnecessary plugins installed. We definitely need LiteSpeed Cache, but we don't need Jetpack, this, and this. But we'll probably keep Akismet so we can prevent spam. And let's delete all these check plugins. Awesome! Let's update LiteSpeed Cache and activate Akismet. We won't configure this, but we will add a new plugin to migrate the site. Let's add new. And on the search bar, let's search for WP Vivid. This is the plugin we need. Let's install and activate this. And now we need to go to the live site we are transferring out of. As you can see, this is how it looks. We need to replicate this site. Let's log into the WordPress backend. And let's do the same thing. Let's go to installed plugins. These are the plugins installed on the site. You can see SiteGround's plugins here because this site is hosted on SiteGround. So once we transfer over the data and files to DigitalOcean, we can delete these plugins. But now let's add the migration plugin. Search for WP Vivid like before. Install and activate. And now we want to transfer the database and files of this site. And we want to save those data and files on our local computer so we can upload it to DigitalOcean. And let's create a backup. This is the progress bar. How long it takes depends on how big your site is. When it is done, let's scroll down and you'll see this backup here. Let's download it to our computer. Click on download again. Save it to our computer. And we will just wait for the download to complete. And when it's done, let's go to the virtual site on DigitalOcean and let's upload the file we have just downloaded. Let me drop the file here and click upload. You can see the progress here. And once the file is uploaded, let's click on restore. Let's click on this again. And all the files and database are being copied over from the previous host. Once it is done, click on OK and you will immediately be logged out. And you will see this security warning. Let's advance to the site and log into the WordPress backend. And then let's go to plugins. And you will see all the plugins are copied over and all the plugins that were previously activated are now deactivated. So as I said, we don't need SiteGround's plugins anymore. Let's deactivate and delete them. And then we want to activate the LiteSpeed Cache plugin again. And Akismet, we won't configure this. Let's go back to plugins. And now we can delete the WP Vivid because the migration is basically done. It is really up to you because you can use this plugin to create backups for your sites. For this tutorial, I will just delete this away. And now if we visit the virtual site, you will see an exact replica of the site hosted on the previous server. So this means we are ready to point the domain name server over to DigitalOcean. But before that, let us configure the settings on LiteSpeed Cache. Let me expand this out. And then let's go to the general settings. Now if you want to use the Quick Cloud CDN, you can request for a domain key, but we will not be setting up CDN here. I'll probably be doing it on another tutorial. As for the guest mode, we want to turn this on. The guest optimization, we want this on as well. And let's save settings. Now let's go to the cache settings. So all these settings has been turned on by default, but as for the cache mobile, we need to turn this on manually. And let's save changes. Now as for these, I don't think we need to configure any of this except for the object cache. Now if you're seeing this failed connection test, you just need to give it a while. Once the DNS has been pointed to DigitalOcean, you'll naturally get a pass on this. As for the object cache, we want to turn this on and let's save changes. Now let's go to the browser settings. As for the browser cache, we want to turn this on. Let's save changes and let's go to advanced. We want to turn this on and save changes. That's it for the cache settings. We will not matter with the CDN as I've mentioned. Now let's go to the image optimization. We'll go to the image optimization settings. We need to turn this on because we want the image optimization settings to be applied automatically. As for remove original backups, the LiteSpeed Cache plugin will create a separate image for optimization by default. So there are always two versions of an image. It will take up the server space, so generally I will turn this on because I keep original images on my local computer as backup anyway. So this setting is really up to your preference. Now as for the image optimization method, I truly believe the lossless compression method is the best, but if you really want to keep the quality of your images and you are willing to keep the big image file size, you can choose the losslessly by turning this on. But for me, I will keep it as it is. For WebP, we want to make sure this is turned on. We want to turn this on as well so that WebP images will be displayed. And let's save changes. Next, let's go to page optimization. We want to minify CSS. Now, I don't like to combine CSS because in case any of the CSS files are flagged by, for example, Google PageSpeed Insights, I want to know what they are. If you combine CSS, you will only see one CSS file without knowing what are the causes. So personally, I will keep this off. And then we want to turn this on. And then we want to load CSS asynchronously. As for the font display optimization, I want to select swap because in case a Google font on my site did not load in time, I want a web save font to be loaded first. And when a Google font has fully loaded, it can swap with the web save font. And that's why we will select swap and let's save changes. Next, let's go to JS settings. We want to minify JavaScripts. Similarly, we don't want to combine JavaScripts, and then we want to turn this on. And my preferred method of deferring JavaScript is deferred. If you don't know the difference between deferred and delay, watch this video at the top right. It is a video on Google PageSpeed Insights, but I shared a detailed concept of JavaScript's deferment. Anyway, let's save changes. And let's go to HTML settings. We want to minify HTML. We want to remove query strings, load Google Fonts asynchronously, remove WordPress emoji because it will slow down the site, and let's save changes. Now let's go to media settings. We want to lazy load images, turn this on. This is for CDN. We want to lazy load iframes so that any embedded videos like YouTube videos will only play when clicked upon. And then we want to add missing sizes to improve cumulative layout shift, which is a core web vital. We want to turn this on as well as it will speed up the site generally, and let's save changes. Next, let's go to media excludes. In case your largest contentful pane on a page is an image, you don't want to lazy load them because it will matter with the core web vitals. In that case, you want to add the image URL over here. And then let's go to localization. Now, if your website accepts comments, you will usually see the comment author images because WordPress is loading Gravatar on your site. You can cache the Gravatar, which will speed up your site, but you risk the Gravatar not loading. So you have to play with the setting to see if it works on your site. But I will keep this off for now. Let's go to tuning. And I think there is nothing else for us to adjust. We are basically done with the configuration of LiteSpeed Cache. The next step for us is to go to our domain name registrar to point the domain name server to DigitalOcean. So the name registrar I'm using is Namecheap. This is where I purchase all my domains. Let me log in and let me select this domain. And as you can see, the domain name server is now pointing to SiteGround. We need to change that. So let's select Namecheap Basic DNS and save changes. As you can see, it would take up to 48 hours for the propagation to complete. Sometimes it takes only a few minutes, but it could take as long as 48 hours. Now, as for this case, we need to select Advanced DNS. We need to make sure that we have an A record that points to the IP address at DigitalOcean. This basically means that we have assigned this domain name to this IP address. And then we need to set another A record with the www for the domain name, which also points to the same IP address. And then once you save changes, the last thing we need to do is to wait for the propagation. Give it an hour or two before we install the SSL.
6.5 hours later.
And we are back. Let's open up PuTTY. We want to paste the IP address here and let's click open. Now let me expand this. We want to log in as root. Let's enter the password and enter the domain name, hit enter, Y to verify. We want to install the SSL certificate. And as you can see, the domain is now accessible. We need to put in an email address, hit enter, Y to verify the email address. And now the SSL certificate is installing. And now it has been successfully installed. It is asking if I should force HTTPS. Let's hit Y and enter. And now let's update the system. Let's give this a while. And it is done. Now all that is left is for this domain name server to be pointed to DigitalOcean. And how we check that is to log into the WordPress backend. And do you remember when this domain was hosted on SiteGround? It had the SG purge here, which was from the SiteGround Optimizer plugin. Right now it is gone. And you can see the LiteSpeed logo here. And here it is. This basically means that this website is now hosted on DigitalOcean. And if we go to the plugins, it is exactly where we left on the IP address. And if we go to the LiteSpeed Cache settings, we can see that all the settings we have previously done are still there. So we are all good. We have transferred this domain to DigitalOcean. And that's basically it. I hope this tutorial is simple enough for you to migrate your WordPress site to DigitalOcean. If this is your first time using a Linux platform like PuTTY, I hope it is not too complicated for you. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please give a thumbs up if you find this video helpful. I'm actually doing all these tutorials to document how I set up the web server because I'm testing multiple web hosts to find which is the fastest and cheapest for me to migrate my sites from SiteGround. My hosting plan with them is ending and it is not performing as well as back in the day, and they are quite expensive to renew. So once I've identified the fastest and cheapest web host, I'll post the results on the right and I'll leave a link in the description as well. Thanks for watching, take care, and as always, stay safe.